This show is brought to you by the Sauna Times Public Sauna Map. The Public Sauna Map is free for you to use and click around, and hopefully give us a suggestion as you click around. If you know of a really great public sauna that is not on the map, drop us a line right there on the website. You can share your favorite public sauna and we'll get it added in. Really awesome for me to travel around and use the map to know where to go when I'm ready for some good sauna action. So to get to the public sauna map, just go to saunatimes.com and right up at the top, sauna map. See you at one of these, hopefully down the road. Well, Daniel, how you doing, brother?
Doing well, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. And where does this podcast find you?
I am in Cornville, Arizona at our house.
Fantastic. And Cornville is where?
Cornville is pretty much central Arizona, right below Sedona. Mm-hmm. So we are not fully at the top of the mountains, but about halfway up. If you're going to Flagstaff from Phoenix, we're about halfway.
Perfect. I thought I'd start with a doozy, and this is from our mutual friend, thermal soul brother, Harvey Martin, and he's one of the reasons how we connected, I think, and we can speak to that in a little bit. But he's asking me to ask you what the spirit of sauna means to you. So I'm going to hit you up with that one.
What the spirit of sauna means to me. Well, I think that from my experience, that is a place to spend time with friends. That's where it took me after our first sauna build in 2017, using your ebook, by the way. It was a place to spend time with friends and experience good heat. Good heat was at the center of it all, and that was a learning experience for me as well, what good heat actually was, because we were able to heat up our sauna, our first one, but it wasn't until I experienced a Kuma that I really felt that good heat, and a lasting heat that doesn't expire after a couple splashes of water on the rocks, or the hot room door opening to the elements. So I would say the spirit of sauna for me is good friendship and that sweating it out. It's a little bit of a trial, a personal trial, because each sauna, depending on the mood I'm in, can be a challenge. And I have to get into a space where I can overcome the heat and try to regulate my body as my heart rate starts pumping hard and nearing towards explosion sometimes,
Right
which
on.
I'm sure you're well aware of that feeling.
Yes, wonderfully summarized. So we're going to jump around a little bit, but in terms of chronology and stuff, you grew up where?
I grew up in Northeast Minneapolis. Yeah.
So you're a Minneapolis boy.
Mm-hmm.
What initially got you into sauna? You've experienced sauna prior to 2017, I'd gather. Tell us about your journey into that space of sauna.
Like everyone, I experienced the hotel electric heater sauna growing up. My mom and dad took me to a hotel. We'd go up to the North Shore or somewhere in Iowa or wherever it was, and you'd go to the pool, and then you would see this little room with some wood benches and a heater. And that never appealed to me before. Maybe at the health club they had a nice sauna that got hot enough where I said, whoa, this is actually a thing. But I would always lean towards the steam room generally in those situations when there was both options. It wasn't until 2015 when I heard Wim Hof on Joe Rogan, because my roommate at the time and good friend, Ken Hannigan, he sent me that link because it was fall coming towards winter and I was dreading it. I did not want to go into winter. I had already been snowbirding to Arizona and I'm just like, just get me out of here. But then I heard that podcast and it was kind of like this new perception of the cold. Let's use it as a training modality.
Right.
And
So that would have been the winter of 2015.
Yeah,
And
winter of 2015.
did you do any sauna with cold plunging and jumping through holes in the ice and Wim Hof breathing?
Well, at the time, we lived right a block away from Minnehaha Creek in Minneapolis, which is close to you, but I didn't know that at the time. So Ken and I, we started doing the breathing techniques. We got rid of all of our furniture in the living room and we just put mats and pillows and blankets so we could lay down and just do Wim Hof, have a place to invite people over, do Wim Hof, and then we would walk down to the Minnehaha Creek, sometimes in the snow, hopefully, and go do our breathing in the living room and then about a 5-minute walk down to the creek.
Cool.
We
And
we
I
were
have to ask you, what was longer, the walk to the creek, and then, or the walk back from the creek when you're all cold and wet on a January Minnesota day?
Oh, for sure, the walk back, because your feet are wet, and I guess I didn't understand the concept of like a sandal or something. So we would always walk back in the snow barefoot, and it was like
You guys
getting
are
back to the
crazy.
house, your feet are
I knew,
starting to get.
hey, I know you and Ken are crazy, but I didn't know to that level you're crazy because there were no rules back then. Like there were none of these thermal feet wear that are authorized by the Wim Hof certified Facebook group, and you guys were just total like freestyling this.
Yeah. And of course, we were, at first, it was like, oh, I can do this. This is no problem. I'm tough. And of course, I go harder than I should have. It wasn't until I took the Wim Hof course online that I learned about the idea of, gradually taking baby steps into the cold. We were just cutting holes in the ice from the beginning.
Beautiful. And then
Yeah.
tell us about overlay sauna within that time frame. How did that come into the fold with you guys?
Actually, we were down by the creek doing our cold plunges, and I think we were just getting dressed, putting our clothes back on. And this was in maybe November. So it wasn't like fully snow on the ground yet, but still getting cold. We ran into JP, and told us that he had a wood burning sauna, JP of 612 Sauna. So he also lived on Minnehaha Creek, not far away. You know the apartment, or it was like a duplex, I think. I don't think he lives there anymore. But he said, "Come on over." He was into Wim Hof too. So I don't know if this was 2016 or when, somewhere in there, 2015, 2016. So we went over and he introduced us to like an authentic sauna with a wood burning Kuma stove. And that was the first time I ever really experienced the real deal. And immediately I remember it was Ken, JP. Oh, it was 2016 because I remember the conversation. Trump just won, and that's what we were talking about. You know, maybe not the best conversation in the sauna, but that's what we were talking about. It just happened. And so, yeah, it was right around there, right after 2016. But the point is Ken and I said, we have to have this. Like, just once is not enough. We have to figure out how we're going to do this. And that's when I came across the ebook. And that's when I came across you. And we basically just followed that ebook the best we could. Not exactly. We broke the number one rule, I think, and that was if you're going to save money and skimp, don't do it on the stove. I don't know if you still subscribe to that, but I think that was kind of the thing at the time. And that's what we did. We found a welder on Craigslist, and he made us like this little dinky stove that he made for fish houses. He just welded on a gate for the rocks, a basket on top for the rocks. And yeah, but it
Well, you were
worked.
in the game. You were
We were in the
sweating. You
game.
were taking sauna, and I didn't know you then. I think we ran into each other at a coffee shop. You came over and introduced yourself.
Yes. After we successfully fired that thing up and it worked, we were able to get it up to 200. It didn't have a changing room, so it didn't have that buffer to hold the heat in, and the stove couldn't really handle much Lolu, but it did the job. It got us, it was the gateway into it. And after it was successful, I saw you at 5 Watt, and I had to talk to you. So I think I went up to you and said, "Hey, you're Glenn. I read your ebook and we built a sauna because of it."
Right.
And then we became friends.
Yeah, we became fast friends and have stayed in close contact. You're no stranger to sauna building. I mean, this is a classic case of a candle that lights another candle. You went on to build subsequent builds, and we can talk about that. But before I do, let's touch on this because you've been around the circle, of heat, and you're, I would say, a connoisseur of good heat. I mean, how important is it, and how often does it come up short? You've experienced many, many different saunas through the whole gamut. How at what frequency do you think good heat comes up short, and does it really matter? And do people really know good heat? Like, do you have any thoughts to that?
Well, to answer your first question, my first sauna experience was a hotel sauna that wasn't turned on when I got into the gym or the locker room. So you would turn it on, and of course I never waited long enough for it to heat up. So that was always my perception of what it was. And then building a hot room and using just a dinky little stove that you had to chop the pieces of wood like this so they would fit through the stove, and how much of a struggle it was, and how you had to use like a chop saw and use kiln drying lumber just to get that thing hot. So
And
I experienced that. That was how we were living for like a year.
and I remember during that time running into some post or somewhere, or I think it was on Facebook or something like that, where you were recording yourself in Home Depot purchasing like heavily discounted construction lumber as a hack or workaround for these wimpy stoves that have a small firebox. But you were doing, I mean, that's actually a nice little hack that you found for BTUs.
Right. 70% off at Home Depot. It's kiln drying, right? And you can use your chop saw, and that'll fit through any little hot bot or stove door that is too small.
Right on. And
So anyways, that was my perception of it, right? That's what we knew, that's what we were working with. And then we upgraded that same sauna to Akuma, and it was like, okay, this is a totally different thing we're dealing with here. It would hold heat. It would heat the room up fast. Unlimited Lolu to an extent. And just a beautiful piece inside the sauna to look at, the sound. Yeah. Real tank. So well, I'll continue. Then I lived with Matt, my friend Matt, in Linden Hills. After our last sauna talk, this was back in 2019. It was you and me on your bench at your backyard sauna. And we made a podcast. You just got back from your first trip to Finland. I don't know what the number was. It was like 50 saunas in 12 days or something that you did.
Yeah, man, that was really cool. I couldn't think of anybody better to interview me after a journey like that, where I was just kind of like, I had sauna brain, from taking 50 or experiencing 50 different saunas in 12 days, and to add up the rounds was a heavy multiple of 50, and you and I were 51, 2, and 3 in terms of sessions. 51. The 51st sauna I took was with you the day I got back after that journey, and that is a Sauna Talk podcast. It's available if you want to listen to it. There are some fresh thoughts about good heat and what sauna means, and some I don't know. I was very happy to sit on the bench with you. So that was a date stamp as well. That was 2019.
Yeah. Thanks for having me that time, because I learned so much from that conversation with you. You were so fresh off the boat with this experience. And actually, I didn't know Matt at the time, but he heard that episode, and then he was going to get like an electric stove. But I think because of that episode and a couple conversations, he built his in his backyard and got a Kuma and made a really nice hot room. And I ended up moving in there in between my last lease and then moving to Arizona. We lived with him in Linden Hills, and I did that thing every day. We just kept that thing hot all the time. So he had people coming in and out using it without even, you didn't have to tell him you were coming. He would just say, sauna's hot, go ahead and use it.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And so, but my point though is we've had Kumas ever since then. And it's just, yeah, I absolutely,
So I want
that's
to be
good
fair,
heat.
because
Yeah.
some people think I work for this company, Lampa Manufacturing, and I don't. I mean, I'm like you. I'm a loyal enthusiast. And to keep that fair and in context, I know many people listening have a different sauna stove, and that's cool. You've experienced many, many different saunas heated by many different brands and stuff like that. I mean, are we drinking the Kuma Kool-Aid, or is it in fact Kool-Aid that's worthy of drinking, separate from other drinks one can have?
It's Kool-Aid worth drinking for sure. And I know we had talked about this is new to me that there, I don't know, can we get into this? This is news to me that there's people that say that Kuma's not a sauna stove. Yeah, and I just completely disagree with that, to say it lightly. And that radiant heat is not a good way to heat. It has no place inside of a sauna hot room, radiant heat. Again, I'm sorry. It sounds ridiculous
Yeah.
based on my experience. I love the Kuma. I've had so many good sauna sessions and so many people that I brought into a Kuma sauna and they just leave a different person. So I don't know. Yeah, I can't speak for any other stove just because maybe I've experienced it, but not like I've experienced the Kuma. The Kuma's been a daily part of my life, and if you look at the hairs on my leg, they're still there. They never got burnt off by a red hot Kuma, wall or something, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage listeners to go on Sauna Times, and in the search bar, you could type Jazz Trio of Heat Transfer. And at the risk of getting very nerdy about how heat transfers, I think it's kind of relevant, to talk about. We don't want it to get too crazy because neither you nor I are thermal engineers, and yet you don't have to be that level of a weatherman to know which way good heat rolls. And I really believe in the multi-directional heat of mass, Lampomassa. I think we're drinking that Kool-Aid together. And, there's certainly other ways to achieve Lampomassa, or good, dense, rich heat, than a different brand than Kuma. You think about a smoke sauna where you have many thousands of pounds of rock that are hot, and this whole thing. But again, so I'm walking a little tightrope. I mean, we're brand checking here, but it is part of your life, and it's certainly part of my life. And I have unabashed in endorsing that product, loving that product, and sharing my love of it and our love. Um, you're going to
100%.
get
I
another.
had no beef. I have no beef with any other stove. I only had an emotional reaction when I heard that the quote that the Kuma isn't a sauna stove, and that's just ridiculous to me. When I've had such a good time with it, not just a good time, life changing, transformational time to the point where after experiencing that Kuma with JP in his backyard and then going back and forth with the creek. Why is it so good? Because when you go into the creek and you get back into the stove, this thing performs because when you're cold, just got out of ice water, you want a nice hot room, right? And
Yeah.
that
So what does that mean, right? Now, temperature is one measure of heat, and we know that, and that's great. But that's air. That's your air, and you have air temperature that is through
hello,
convection, the
hello.
movement of air. And so,
I don't know what happened.
yeah. And so
I think we're
you
still
have that.
live. You might be
You
able to
can.
hear me.
Can you
We're
hear me all
getting some
right?
technical difficulties.
I got you just fine.
Okay, the host
Daniel's in
should
the
stop recording.
he's in the weeds right now. I'm trying to reconnect. So I'm on the rampage about the three methods of heat transfer and talking about how air. Like I'll give the air heat. Like
Okay, it says we're still being recorded.
you
Maybe I'm
can,
going to just leave the room
you
and come back.
just to get nerdy about that. Sometimes a hot room can say 200 Fahrenheit, something like that. And what we have is a lot of air that's hot. In other words, you
Hmm.
have convection. It's almost like a blow dryer has heated a room, right? And I often will use the story of you could wake up in Minneapolis on a January day and get out to your cold car and say you're driving to Duluth and within a few miles maybe you're on the highway and then you look in your car and it says 72 degrees, but it's cold. Like you could drive 2.5 hours to Duluth and your feet are still icebergs, even though the room says 70. The climate in the hot room says 72. So I think that's the difference here of kind of heating mass. And one of the ways we do that is through conduction, the direct heat transfer. And then this beautiful thing that I will go down the rest of my life to say that radiant is awesome.
I'm with you.
Multi-directional, brother.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Let's get into other things. I'd like to know about your current interests. Like, and this is not something you woke up yesterday and said, "Hey, I have an interest." You have this expanded interest, and I'm enthralled by it. And I think I'd love to talk a little bit in depth about what you're up to now and what was the nucleus for what you're up to now.
Long story short, back in 2019, I took a deep dive into permaculture. And that was a podcast by a guy named Jim Gale. He really piqued my interest in it. And I ended up taking just a basic permaculture design certificate course, which is like the very entry level thing to do for someone that wants to dive into permaculture. And that's when I found a guy named Jeff Lawton. And he's a very well-known permaculture teacher, and he's done a lot. He's practiced a lot of permaculture around the world. And I was living at Minnesota during the time when I was taking this course. And I came across, so permaculture can work in any climate. You can figure out a way to design a system based on what you're working with to maximize the output. And permaculture, if you haven't heard of it, it just means permanent culture or permanent agriculture. And a lot of times people will use the term food forestry as kind of another way to say permaculture. It's about creating as many perennial systems that have minimal input you plant them once, and then it's more of a maintenance thing for a perennial plant. And then you stack as many functions as possible. So the idea is to use the energy available on your site and maximize it. So that would be using the water as many times as you can before it goes down the drain. As far as heat, you want to use the sun, the solar heat, as many times as you can before you lose that energy. And so basically what permaculture is it's a design science. You're looking at the piece of property that you're working on, and it could be any size. It could be a condo building in downtown Minneapolis. You could find a way to design a system that would maximize your output. Right. So that's just in a nutshell. That's what permaculture is.
When you when you checked into this podcast, and Jim Cal is his name?
Jim, like James, Jim Gale.
Jim Gale.
Yeah.
Was Arizona on your mind at that time?
No, but I loved Arizona. I should say, yeah, I mean, as we talked about, I'm in Arizona. I loved coming to Arizona. I had first come to Arizona in 2010 for a conference or something, and I came to Sedona, and I was there for an afternoon, but then I had to go. And I remember thinking, what was that place? I have to get back to that place. I didn't have time to stay. I didn't have time to explore or anything. I just got a quick taste of it. And I remember leaving like, I don't know what I got to do, but I got to get back to that place. So starting in 2013, started coming down every winter just to explore, hike, enjoy the warmth during the Minnesota cold. And so that's...
And something magical happened on a hike. What year was that, and what was that magic?
In 2016, I met my wife, Omina, on a hike to the top of Bell Rock in Sedona through a mutual friend, Peter Allen Gersten.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And she's with you right now.
Yeah, she's with me. She's not here now, but yeah, she's here with me in Cornville. And it should be noted that it was you, Julia, Omina, and myself that made the Star Tribune during the polar vortex of 2019 when we were doing a sauna and cold plunge on the coldest day. What was it? Like I think it was negative 29
nice,
at your
29
house.
Fahrenheit? That
Yeah.
sound right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. That's great. I'll try to put a photo of that in this episode. I remember that fondly. That was a great night. We had a great sauna, man. It was, And I think, did Brian Peterson join us after being on the one end of the camera? He was then one of the lead photographers of the Star Tribune newspaper. It was his idea. The editor had cast all of the photographers and journalists out into the field for the polar vortex in Minneapolis. They knew this cold stretch was going to be lingering, and Brian didn't need an idea or a light bulb to know where to go and what to shoot. It was a wonderful opportunity for him to share with readers visually and also through word about how sauna is a really kick-ass way to get through a double-digit below zero polar vortex. So there we were in our backyard, and I remember it so well. And Brian, he's insane, man. He was out there in that cold filming us, and then. I'm like, come on, man, are you done yet? Join us on the bench. And he was able to shut off his camera.
Exactly. He had to wait for that magic moment to get those pictures that he got, and they were really beautiful. Yeah.
So Arizona wasn't on your mind in that moment, but it has been on your mind. Well, maybe it was on your mind that moment.
So I started my job in 2014. I'm a residential real estate appraiser. And it's a family business. I work for my cousin, and I told him I was his first employee back in 2014 because he left his big company to start his own operation in the Twin Cities. And I said, he asked if I wanted to be his first trainee, his first employee. And at the time, it was the perfect timing for me. I was just at a point where I had nothing else. So I said, yes, 100%, I want to do this, even though I didn't know what appraising was. And I said, I'll do this, but please, you got to promise me. I'll go 100% all in. You have to promise me that eventually you'll get me out of Minnesota and I can go somewhere else and do this. Because at the time, I just wanted to get out. I mean, it wasn't, I don't want to bash Minnesota or Minneapolis too much. I just wanted to get out. I was here my whole life and I still love it, but I did want to explore the world, basically.
Yeah.
That's where I was. And I loved the mountains. I loved hiking. And the first time I went to the desert, I just fell in love with it. And so, yeah, that was since 2014. Even before that, I said, I'd love to get where, I don't know if it's specifically Arizona, but somewhere in the West. I had road tripped all over the West, in the desert, specifically the Southwest. And I just fell in love with it when I saw the rock structures and the colors of the sky at sunset and all that. Just something about it captured me. And yeah. So,
and
yeah.
When you took the course, back to the permaculture, with Jeff Lawton, were you thinking that area to relocate and to do your thing?
Yes, because in a nutshell, my cousin, who's the owner of the company now, it's grown since 2014, he saw a quick path to good clients in Arizona. So there was a few options, but Arizona was the most obvious for us, and Phoenix specifically. So yeah, I knew I had my chance for income in Phoenix. And there's other places I would have liked to go, but Phoenix was the clear path to victory was going to be Phoenix. Yeah.
So then, what was next then for you in terms of the chronology of getting into this agriculture, perennial plants, the forestry, food forestry? Tell us the chronology.
Yeah. So basically what happened, in 2020, I took the permaculture design certificate course with Jeff Lawton. It was an online course. It was all recorded, so I didn't meet him or anything. It was an online course from like 2006. And at this point, I had no idea I was going to Arizona. In the back of my mind, I would have loved to, but I was still in Minneapolis. And I took the course, and I remember thinking, this is an old video. I wonder if Jeff Lawton is still doing permaculture stuff, because I had no idea. And I should say, the reason I had that thought is because when I saw the videos, he was blowing my mind. I loved it. I was like, whoa, this is so cool. When I took that recorded permaculture design, the PDC it's called, when I took that recorded PDC, he was just like blowing my mind. And I said, I want to know if this guy's still around doing stuff. Like, are there opportunities to learn more? Sure enough, he is still doing it. And one of his projects, which is one of the most famous permaculture projects in the world, is the Greening the Desert site in the Dead Sea Valley of Jordan, just 10 minutes from the border of the West Bank, Palestine. So I had immediately went down the rabbit hole of that project. There was a ton of videos on YouTube about it. And the whole premise is taking a totally destroyed Dust Bowl landscape that can't support anything and turning it into a thriving food forest, and eventually being able to grow things that should not be able to grow there through the creation of microclimates. And basically you're just using these principles to sink the water back into the land, and then use trees that can take the heat and they need little water, and you use that to start and create a microclimate that will produce shade and wind blockage and actually condensation drip, so it's kind of like you just got to get the wheel started and then it will run on its own.
Yeah. And you need that. You use that metaphor before with me about like this. You got to use an external force to change that desert, like convert that desert into sustainability of growing and shade and all these things you mentioned. But you need like a fly. Man needs to move the flywheel and get it spinning.
Exactly. So I saw that video, and in the back of my head, I'm like, now is the time. Now is this is the time to go to Arizona. In my head, I was thinking these two ideas just kind of hit me at the same time. So I decided, I remember it was 2021. I woke up in the middle of the night. I got an Instagram notification. I look at my phone in the middle of the night, which is not good, but I got an Instagram notification. It was from Jeff Lawton. So I clicked on it, and he said they were opening registration to doing your actual PDC at the Greening the Desert site in Jordan. So I literally booked it in the middle of the night. I just said, I want to do this, and I don't even want to think too much about it. So just
danger to those
book
listening.
it.
Dude. Number one, unless you want your life changed, don't go on your phone in the middle of the night, and don't have access to your credit card in the middle of the night.
Right.
Because you woke up the next day with it literally booked.
I was booked. Yeah, I didn't book the flight, but I paid for my admission into the course. And so basically what it was 2 courses. It was the PDC, which is just the basic and 72-hour intro course. And then the second one was the practical course, where we went out into the food forest, and he showed us basically what he did and how to maintain it.
So jumping forward, you get on a plane, you go to Jordan, and how long were you there?
I was there for a month.
A month.
Yep.
And how at what percent is, or at that time, what percent sustainable, I guess is the right word, like is or was the Jordan project when you arrived?
I mean, if you go back to the videos from 2001, when before they started the project, but they knew they were going to start the project because they had funding, it was a dire situation. Like Jeff Lawton described it as maggots eating down to the bone. Everyone was growing everything under plastic, using a bunch of synthetic fertilizers and spraying everything. Mm-hmm. There was no just, forest, because it gets overgrazed. Anything that popped up, there's so much livestock, they're just going to eat it to the point where it could not sustain any amount of life. And if you go to Jordan outside of the project, I mean, Jeff Lawton has had this huge impact on the community, where now the neighbors are doing it, and even the royal family got involved, and they're starting to fund more projects. So he got it going, but still large part of the area looks like it did before they started.
Describe for us, so you land and you get over to the project itself. How big is it, and can you describe for listeners what it felt like, or what it looks like at that time when you were there? And so this was about 15, 18 years in operation or in development, right? So has it matured? Like, and what does it look like?
So it's only about 2 acres. If I'm correct, it's not much it's not much more or less than that. 2 acres approximately. And it's in this rural part of the Dead Sea Valley, about 45 minutes to an hour drive from Amman, which is higher elevation. So when you get there, beautiful people, by the way. My host, who I went out on a limb, I met him. I needed a place to stay in the Dead Sea Valley because the lodging was all booked up. So we had to find our own accommodations. And I didn't like Airbnb. There was Airbnbs, but you can't see exactly where it is on the map until you book. Then they give you the address. So I'm like, I don't know. I want to be really close to the site, because I've never been in a foreign country like that. I've been to Cancun and Europe, but not the Middle East. So I wanted to be close to the school. Like, I knew it was safe. Everyone told me Jordan's perfectly safe to go to, just stay away from certain areas or whatever. But I didn't speak Arabic at all, and I wanted to be close. Anyway, so I found this little place on Google Maps that had like a little bed and breakfast symbol, but it wasn't on Airbnb or anything. So I clicked on it, went to the Facebook page, sent them a message, And he said, yeah, send me this much money over Western Union. I'm like, all right, let's do it. Well, Mohamed is his name, and we're still friends. I mean, it was the most warmest welcome I ever received. And he picked me up from the airport, and he basically told me that there's an Arabic tradition of when a guest comes, you don't ask any questions, you don't ask for any money, you just take care of them for 3 days. And then, you can talk business. And that's exactly what he did. I got in. He insisted on taking me out with his friends, showed me around Amman. His mom made me food. It was amazing. And then he ended up taking us to his house, which was in the Dead Sea Valley, and it ended up being right next door to the site, which was perfect.
And you didn't know that to begin with, or you?
No, I knew it, and it was the only reason I booked the place is because I could see on Google Maps, you can find Greening the Desert site, and the Reefy Chalet, as he calls it, is right next door. So it was perfect.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so then you get to the
Reefy. Yep.
What was your initial impressions or feeling, and what were you looking at when you got to the Greening of the Desert project site?
Well, the surrounding neighborhood is just rock and dust, and then these prosopis trees, which are a spiky desert tree. And if I have this correct, they're so thorny. They say in the crucifixion story of Jesus, this was the plant that they made the crown of thorns out of. And these things are like this, razor sharp. You poke it. I mean, they're the real thorny, hardcore desert tree. So that's pretty much all that grows in the area if there's no intervention like what they did at Greening the Desert. So you walk down the dirt road and you look around. Everyone uses concrete. They make their houses out of concrete walls to create a perimeter around their yard. And then it's dust and stone. And that's basically the landscape. And then you see a lot of sheep and goats everywhere trying to scrounge for whatever plant material is growing out of the ground, which is very little.
Right.
Then you walk down, and the whole site is enclosed by a concrete wall fence. And you step in, you open the door, and it's just lush jungle with a date palm overstory. So that's the biggest tree with the most shade at this point was the date palm, but it wasn't always that way. They had to start with that spiky prosopis tree to get the system started. Mm-hmm. And they basically said it was a 95% prosopis at the beginning and 5% food producing. 10 years later, it's 95% food producing and 5% hardy desert tree. So it takes about a 10-year plan to transform the landscape. But I don't want to get too off topic to the question.
No, you're right. Sorry to interrupt you, but I love this topic, and I think you're right there on a great topic of. I'm really keen on that moment when you first went into the gate, into this 2-acre Greening of the Desert project site. I mean, you knew right away something was different, obviously, and it wasn't.
Oh yeah.
The native trees. You were starting to experience tree cover. Was it really comfortable from step one onto the land?
Yeah, this is a very harsh climate. I mean, this was the harshest climate I've ever been in, and it doesn't help. There's not really as much AC. I mean, where we were staying, they had mini splits. The power went out several times, and it gets hot quick. And then the other thing is the flies. It was the time of year where farmers were putting manure down. And I don't know if it was just then, but it was probably, 110 degrees, flies everywhere. They had these things called tiger mosquitoes that just, when they got you, it hurt afterwards and it would itch. So you'd scratch it, and then you would have a scab, like an open bug bite wound, and then that's what the flies loved. So if you kept it exposed, you'd have like 3 flies feeding off of your open scab that the mosquito caused. So that was like the harsh climate. So when you get inside the food forest, there's a lot more condensation because the trees, they put out, they put out a mist. I think it's called evapotranspiration, but they put out a mist, and that evaporative cooling effect plus all the shade. So it was quite a significant different climate inside the food forest by far from stepping outside when you're just sitting in the sun, because there's really no shade unless you're like next to a building or something.
Right.
So yeah, and it wasn't just date palms. There was hundreds of layers. There's 7 layers in a forest. You've got your overstory, your big tall canopy trees, your understory, your shrubs, your green leafy, your ground cover, your roots, your fungi. So there's all these different layers, and the goal of a food forest is to utilize all 7 layers as food producing. So when it's a perennial system like that, like you can use a sweet potato as a root crop, and that creates ground cover, which is going to protect the soil from the sun. So it has a function, but it also has a food production function as well. So you're trying to use plants in your food forest that they have multiple uses, and the idea is the number one use being food for humans and animals. So that's the goal.
What sort of animals are on property there on the 2 acres in Jordan at this Greening of the Desert project site?
Well, I'll give you the cool answer, which they're primarily a chicken system. It's a chicken composting tractor system. But before I talk about that, I just want to say, like, once they created this and it started to mature, they couldn't believe all of the animals that they were finding inside of the 2 acres. Desert tortoises, birds, butterflies, insects they didn't know were there. It created a habitat for animals that no one had seen outside of that site. They don't know how they got there or when they came in, but it was a habitat creation, and just like this very this very small, insignificant piece of land that, it created.
That is so insane. That reminds me of this book, The World Without Us. And he talks about, I forgot the author's name, but he talks about these different places where nature takes over. And one of them is that that area between North and South Korea. It's like a kilometer wide and like 40 miles, long. And it's exactly what you're saying. There's all this wildlife that is there because it's no man's land and man has no presence there. Birds, animals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So amazing. So when you're on this, how long, so 1 month you're there, were most of the days spent in the project site, or were you doing other things, or were you mainly on site there?
Yeah, so the project site has the 2 acre food forest, but then they have a big building. The first level is the classroom, and then a couple rooms for the staff. The second level is the Airbnb. It's like 8 apartments, and then the top level is the restaurant and lounge.
Cool.
And then also on the first level is the cafe, which is open to the public, where they serve things from the garden outside.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And it's a success. Like I'm sure behind the curtain there's been some, learnings and twists
For
and
sure.
turns to get it going. But like for a layman like myself going there, I mean it's rocking, right?
Yeah, it was a success. The point was to demonstrate what can be done with the proper intervention. And like Jeff Lawton says, that right now people consider humans as the most destructive force on the planet, and he wants to demonstrate that through permaculture, and it's not just him, but through permaculture, humans can be the most beneficial influence on the earth through,
Wow, that's so inspiring.
these interventions, these permaculture
So you come
interventions.
home from Jordan, And I don't mean to brush off that. I wanted to
Yeah.
move forward. Is there anything more about the trip? Because there's another huge thing I would love listeners to dive in with you and have listeners check in. So are we cool to move beyond the
Yeah,
trip?
but Jordan, I mean, it was a crash course in desert restoration, desert permaculture. We got to just see it firsthand, the like what it's like to try to run a food forest when everything's against you in the desert, mainly being that evaporation is greater than rainfall. So you have to reverse this brutal cycle of this arid landscape. And that's so I was just attracted to that concept after I heard about it, the desert permaculture, mainly because I love the desert. So that was inside my head. I want to go to Arizona, so I'm going to learn desert permaculture. And then just the how much it stands out when you're successful, because you look on an aerial view and you just see desolate arid landscapes. It's all brown and rocky, and then boom, you just have this green lush oasis in the middle of all of that. And people are thinking, well, how much water are you using to accomplish that? And the answer is, if you do it right, yes, you need water at first, but over time, as it rains, if you put all the elements together the right way, over time, each time it rains, you're going to capture every drop of rain that hits the site. It's going to soak in. It's going to recharge the groundwater, and you just got that cycle going. You got it restarted, and it
Let's
may still need human intervention, but
Yes. Well,
not
so let's
much.
get into the particulars of that one. And we're
Yeah.
going to talk sauna as it relates to your project.
Yes.
Does your project have a name, Daniel?
Well, we're calling our property here, which is only 2 acres, the House Mountain Ranch, because we're in Cornville on a long private dirt road at the base of House Mountain, which is an extinct volcano here in Sedona, Cornville area.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you bought
Yep.
this land, you and Omina, and being an appraiser, you were no stranger to finding land. I give you a lot of faith and credit that you found a perfect spot, and I think you have. I was part of some of the search. I remember you sending me some real estate listings, and so you settled on 2 acres in
Mm-hmm.
Cornville,
Mm-hmm.
and really before purchasing, this Jordan thing was top of mind. So I mean, this is like it's the master plan. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I didn't know about this house and land we're living on when I went to Jordan. I just knew that I was going to go to Phoenix and I was going to go learn desert permaculture before I moved to Phoenix, but I knew that at some point I wanted to get up to the Sedona area just cuz it feels like home to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is the plan then? Let's talk about the base of House Mountain project.
Mhm.
What's the plan?
Well, that's why we're doing the episode today, because we're taking permaculture. And I remember talking to you about this, like, how can we maybe do some sort of post or blog about how sauna fits into permaculture? Where can we use the sauna, the energy found in the sauna? How can we use that twice, right? And how can we maybe use the water of the cold plunge or the shower and reuse it in terms of permaculture? And so we have a 2 acre site here. We have big plans, but that is going to be a lot of work, and we're going to need help. So our first step basically is to create living quarters for people that want to visit the area. And Sedona is the perfect area because people want to come to Sedona anyways from all over the world. So people come here, they can stay here, and then they can help us with a community effort to restore the landscape, use it as a demonstration site for the area. I mean, our end goal is to be able to grow most of our own food. We don't want to say all because that's just ridiculous. I still want to go out to eat with friends, and we're still going to buy food from the market. But our goal is to grow and raise as much of our own food as we can, and then give back. Like it sounds kind of, I don't know, maybe not realistic, but our goal is to be able to raise all of our own food and grow all of our own food and just have huge meals where we bring the neighbors together and say, just come eat. And it all came from right here, or most of it did. And hopefully that'll be like, we can use your candle sauna analogy. If our plan is kind of just like, if we can do it here as a demonstration, recreate what we learned in Jordan, and just give to the community and whoever else wants to come. And then hopefully that will light the candle for them to say, okay, how can we use their property to contribute to the effort until, the end goal would be to just transform the whole area into this awesome permaculture,
Yeah.
permaculture place.
Beautiful. So sauna and the sauna relates, and I have to get very micro about a comparative in a way. When it's January in Minnesota, it's from a water usage standpoint, it's not much different than where you're sitting right now. And we've talked about this, where one of the little tricks that I've done for decades is a 5-gallon water bucket can serve a sauna party of four people with a 32-ounce deli cup. And it's about water economy. Like, we find that 32 ounces is a pretty good amount of ice cold water to dump on one's head to get a nice clean rinse after a sauna session. You get all that sweat off, and then your steam is billowing, and it can be 0 degrees Fahrenheit or 10, 20, 30, whatever. And there you go. So it's a very efficient way to get clean, as we talked about. And so you're going to be borrowing some of those principles of sauna as a way of, in lieu of a shower kind of a thing.
Yeah, because like we talked about last time, the sauna is like a inside-out shower. You sweat it out, and then all you need is a rinse after that, and you're clean. Yeah. So right. That's a huge part. But basically, it goes back to first step is making enough places for people to physically stay here. So we're thinking like find little old RV trailers and put them on a nice little block foundation, make them look good. Just make little cool places where people can sleep. And then at the center of all of that is going to be a nice hot room with a kuma inside of it. So if we're digging swales or making compost or feeding animals or planting trees or whatever whatever we're doing that day, it's always going to end with all of us sweating it out in a sauna, cleaning up, and then minimal water to rinse ourselves off. But it doesn't have to be minimal water because, well, we're on a well right now, and our goal is to minimize that well use and go off as much rainwater as we possibly can. But when we use the water, the idea is to reuse that water after a cold plunge or a shower, and we'll create a swale network where all the rain will go into those swales, slow it down, and let it sink back into the earth. And that's the main problem with the desert, is that we have such rough, arid, dry landscapes, because when it does rain, it all comes at once, and the earth or the ground is hydrophobic, I think the word is, but it does not absorb water. So what happens is you get flash floods, and the water comes and then it's gone before you even know it.
Is a swale like a trench? How would you describe a swale?
A swale is a basin. It's a trench. They say it's on contour, which just means when you're making them, you are looking for equal points of equal elevation along the landscape, because the end goal is to slow the water down and let it sink in. Right now, the problem is it rains and the water flash floods and it's gone. So the land, after that event, the land dries up and it never heals itself. So we're going to try to take that rain event, bring the water onto our landscape, hold it and allow it to sink in, and that's going to change everything. So basically what Jeff Lawton says is after 7 years of that, you've reached maximum water holding potential in your land, and that's when you can start you can get rid of the irrigation, because the swale is a temporary intervention that recharges the groundwater, and it basically gives your trees a chance to suck off that rainwater. Because if you were to measure how much water you can collect in a rain event versus how much water you could possibly use with drip irrigation, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of gallon difference that you would get if you can collect the rainwater versus sending it out via drip irrigation. So rainwater collection and recharging the groundwater it's a powerful thing. It's the way to go, and it works. And we already have examples here where we dug a basin. When it rains, that thing fills up and it just sits there and sinks in. And we planted a plum tree along with a bunch of other trees that didn't have the basin. And the only one that survived July was the one that had the groundwater recharge. We irrigated the other ones, but they didn't survive. And it's part of that is we're brand new to this, so I'm not. But It was a lesson to be learned that when you create a swale or a basin, and people can look up a guy named Brad Lancaster. He's from Tucson, Arizona. He's like another permaculture mentor. I mean, what they did in Tucson's really amazing. They reshaped their neighborhood, and they can measure lower temperatures in their neighborhood during the summer than everywhere else. So it's pretty cool. But yeah.
So I imagine this not too distant future where you'll have places for volunteers, helpers staying on site, and then this little village where there's this common area, gathering point, centered around the sauna and a couple cold plunges and efficient use of water. And you had alluded to this principle of reusing things multiple times. So, rainwater, maybe the next use of that will be the cold plunges themselves, right? And
exactly.
Then who knows what, and they'll end up, watering plants.
So we have swales. So that's the first step, is to find your contour points, dig your swales. And then now when it rains, those swales are going to fill up, but also we're going to send our gray water into those swales as well. So our laundry usage, if we use a gray water safe detergent like Earth Breeze, it's called, they come in these really nice sheets. That water goes into the swales and it's going to feed the trees. Anytime we do a shower, that water should go into the swales. Anytime we do a cold plunge and that water gets kind of nasty, we're going to pop that cork and we're going to send it into the swale. So yeah, nothing is lost in this case. And the more it's used, the more sauna that's used, the more cold plunging that's done, the more showers that are taken, the more water the system gets. And once you have a full tree canopy on the 2 acres, now you get the condensation drip every morning, which is like, I don't know what the statistic is, and I don't want to get it wrong, but it's an amazing statistic that I'll get back to you on. But the amount of water that lands on the ground after you re-green your area just from condensation every morning, it's like that's like a self-sustaining system on its own.
Right. And we talked about detergents and stuff, and we talked about how clean you get. And I love that point you bring up about how sauna cleans you from the inside out. So, I used to not kind of volunteer this information, but I really don't use shampoo, and I really don't use our shower in the house. Are you guys kind of in the same vein? And I think it'll be awesome. Like, you're going to have volunteers down there, and I don't think they'll ever feel so clean after working, in the earth and all day long than after sauna. And again, you don't need these soaps and detergents and shampoos.
100%. I mean, we're not there yet because we don't have our sauna up and running, and that's what we'll be talking about after the cast, I'm sure. But Yeah, that's the goal. The goal is that when you shower from the inside out via sweat, then you don't need all that stuff, and it just makes sense. It's, I don't know, with a lot of things, in my opinion, it's kind of a racket. It's unneeded, and I would say all the detergents, and I hate that. I hate fragrances. I hate perfumes and stuff like that. So if we can get away with from that, yeah, that'll it. And if we use soap, it has to be gray water safe. So you're looking at a more natural product, some sort of solvent. I'm okay with something to thin the oils out and get them off, but
Right.
that's about it. I don't want to be using any
Amen.
weird
Beautiful.
thing.
It
Yeah.
sounds so wonderful, and there's so many great things about what you're doing, Daniel, and they do relate to sauna talk and sauna on several levels. Uh, I think that's a beautiful thing about this practice is, the commonality. Like what is when you think of sauna, you think about the Nordic countries, northern Minnesota, lakes, islands, jumping into a nice cold lake, and that level of nature and topography. But it works extremely well and appropriate in your nature, in your topography.
Hey, it
And it's not
snowed here today. It's snowing right now. It's below freezing today, and maybe not at this moment, but we woke up that way. There's ice on the water buckets. So, yeah, totally. It's completely appropriate here. It's
and
not
so
always 122 degrees.
Yeah. So today, this morning, when you woke up and looking at the weather today, in Cornville, outside of Sedona, it's cold. Like, what is the high temperature today where you are?
Let me tell you. I mean, it's definitely warmer than there, but
Yeah,
we're at 41,
yeah,
and the low will be
beautiful.
21 at 7 a.m., 21 degrees
You know,
Fahrenheit at
yeah,
7
and
a.m.
and so from 1 to 10, how much do you wish you could jump into a sauna today, right now, where you
10.
are? 10. Okay.
I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get this thing going.
From 1 to 10. When we have this conversation in 6 months, what's the chance you will have your sauna going in
It's
Cornville?
it's happening. It's happening, and we're foregoing um, urgent house renovations to have this sauna.
Right
It's more
on.
important. It's more important than leaking pipes.
That's great. That's great. And I'm reminded of my boss, my former boss, when I worked for Nestle. He was my boss for several years, even like, I don't know, 15, 18 years. And he lives not too far from you. I wouldn't say a bike ride, but he's in Scottsdale. And I remember, for people that live there in summer, you develop a little different life, almost a nocturnal life. And he'd be out walking his dogs, well before sunrise. And I'm sure there's a lot of mornings well before sunrise, even up into April, May, and all that, where it's probably wonderful sauna weather at that temperatures at that time.
For sure. I mean, in Minnesota, we were sauning in the summer, and we would just make more of an event out of it because 180, 190, 200 is a lot hotter than 90.
Yeah.
And when you throw ice in the cold plunge, it doesn't matter how hot it is outside to do the hot, cold.
Right on.
You jump
Fantastic.
into an ice bath in 100-degree weather and you're still going to get cold. You're still going to have to
Well,
get out of that ice
well,
bath, right?
well, now you got me on. Like, if you look at the news feed of social media, the big rage is like, here's me in a cold plunge, and I see these photos, and then I look in the background and I see palm trees, and I can't help but think, man, these guys in Australia and California cold plunging, Florida cold plunging. I'm like, there's something about that. It seems a little. It's great. Don't get me wrong, because cold is
Yeah.
cold and ice is ice. But man, that's a lot different than jumping through a hole in the ice. At least in your head, it's different. The
And
topography.
I want to add that the best saunas I've ever had was the polar vortex with you when it was negative 29. And we had those two totally contradicting forces of hot and cold working with each other. And yeah, those were the best ones, no doubt about it.
No doubt. But I also imagine sitting in a cold plunge at sunrise in a June morning, in your on your uh, property here, in not too long of the future from now. Base of the mountain project. There's trees overhead. You're looking through and you're watching the sunrise over the mountain, and that's sauna to me. It's adaptable to many environments and places.
Yep. It's a little bit different, but I think when you come down here after it's done, you're going to have a special appreciation for Cornville.
Oh, I already do, man. I mean, you are such a kindred spirit. I want to thank you for being a guest on Sauna Talk. I'm really grateful to know you, brother. I mean, you are such a wonderful spirit, and your wife Omina. And I will have to say one thing is I do want to get there before it's done. I don't want to be that guy to come down and put the cherry on top and say, "Wow, I helped." I'm going to get my hands dirty with you.
Well, hey, you've already helped. I wouldn't be. It's the devil's in the details, and those are the details that you find in like the Sauna ebook or saunatimes.com, or sending Glenn an email. I mean, none of this, especially that last build we did in 2019, the Mindstrong one, couldn't have done that without you. Even though you weren't maybe there, you were on the phone though. You were on speed dial.
Yeah,
So
man. Yeah, that was a
I
little bit.
appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for remembering, Daniel. I felt a little bit like this happens to me all the time, so I get numb to it, but I forget that I am a lifeline for a lot of people with their builds, and I continue to give. I mean, I'm like that golden retriever, with the stick in his mouth and the tail wagging. When I hear about a great sauna project, I get all excited and want to play.
Yep.
I got some
Number one
really
source for sauna, authentic sauna information is Glenn at Sauna Times, no doubt.
Yeah, put that in the plug. I got Danny. I think I mentioned I got some really great clients. I guess you could call them, and I hate to even use that word client. It sounds so formal. And my other life, my former life in business, I have clients, but I guess you'd call them clients. But some really great sauna projects in the works and stuff, and I'll be sharing those with you and also listeners to the show as this lovely thing we know. Contrast therapy grows and people get into the authentic. It's really great to climb that ladder with others. And brother, anything else, Daniel? I appreciate your time. I love hearing about your life and what you're doing and the meaning that it brings, not just to yourself, but to your what will soon be to neighbors and others coming to help you in your project. It's truly an inspiration, and I want to thank you for being you and diving into this.
And thank you. Thanks for saying that, but thank you for everything you've done over the past, 7 years now. But I think it's just so cool that at the this sauna is going to be a liaison. We know we get people's ears when we share the bench. So it's a great time to just talk it out. And in this case, I'm going to hopefully use it as a conduit for permaculture information. And we can take saunas around hard work in the garden. And I think it's going to be a pivotal part of the food forest and how we get there and how we get there fast. So
Yeah,
again, wouldn't have
the
happened without
community
you. So
and with the community of Sedona as well. They're so perfectly aligned. I mean, it's a wellness community with a lot of people with a lot of tentacles of interest toward sustainability and wellness, health. All of these great attributes: living well, eating well, cold plunging well, sauning well. It's all across the board down there. It's so cool.
yeah, just imagine a thick forest with 100 different kinds of edible fruits and nuts and flowers, and you're in between rounds and you're just totally private because of the dense forestry, and you can just prance around eating apples, eating figs, whatever you want, take a cold plunge, go for a hike. But yeah, it's basically, in between rounds in the Garden of Eden. That is the goal.
Fantastic. Daniel, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Glenn. Always a pleasure to talk to you.